Day at pucatrade.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. Luis Scott Vargas here with Rich Shea. I got vanquished in the shop's mirror, though. I have to admit it was largely my fault. I made a couple strategic mistakes, I think, and then also just ramped up a smokestack without really having a reason to. I don't know what was going on with that, but at the end of it, you were the one who found Crucible plus Strip Mine, and I was trapped under my ensnaring bridge.
Well, I absolutely had some very lucky draws there. That's absolutely true. I was in pretty bad shape for most of... So game one was great. Game one was nice. I just had my trash can friend with 3 arms arrive on the first turn, and gave him a sword, and it was all good from there. And I think being on the play that game was just a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, you had turn on Trike, but I had Metamorph to trade with it and then Revoker for the Jite, so I had a couple turns to actually draw out of it, but then I didn't and got pretty easily run over.
That's true. The bonus copy of Triskelion that arrived off the top put an end to that, but I was in pretty good shape before that happened. It looked like you were breaking for a few turns there.
Yeah, I drew 4 Spheres that game, which is obviously the worst card in the shop's mirror.
Spheres are not good for the shop's mirror, and since I was anticipating it, I only played 2 Spheres of Resistance instead of the usual 3 or 4. I played all the other Spheres, though.
Oh yeah, we're reversed. I have 6 Spheres total also, except I have 4 Spheres because I have so few creatures.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So game 2 was really interesting, and I thought I was going to lose. I think that... I know you mentioned ramping up Smokestack. I think ramping up to 2 makes sense, because you had to get rid of my board before Lodestone Golem arrived. The play that I wasn't expecting was I didn't think you'd let me attack with my Arcbound Worker.
Yeah, so I
guess my Doomed Traveler, since it makes a flyer.
Right, I let you attack the one turn because I wanted to get another look with Bazaar. Otherwise, I would have had to Bazaar down to 0 because the card in my hand doesn't do anything. Ultimately, I don't think that mattered because I did not find the Crucible, but yeah, not finding Crucible, I had a lot of turns to find it. That's the card I needed clearly. If I get Crucible, Bazaar, Bridge, Null Rod, all that stuff down, but I ended up basically the net result of me ramping up that smokestack for no reason. I still don't know why I clicked yes. Was I had to sacrifice Leyline of the Void?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that Leyline
is kind of how that ended up. Maybe I shouldn't have sacked Leyline to begin with, but I don't know. Because
if you still had Leyline, that's a very different game. Not only because I wouldn't have been able to use that Crucible to grind out your board, but also because my Doomed Traveler just becomes a Mons Goblin Raider there.
Yeah, Leyline, I think, interacts quite well in the mirror against aggro shops because, like you said, it does mainly to shut down Crucible, but also mitigate Arcbound Ravagers, Modular, and then Hangerback Walker's Death Trigger. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, Leyline is actually an incredibly good card against this deck. It has a surprising number of graveyard triggers for what it does. So.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, I don't know. That game, like I said, was a weird combination of me getting, I think, very unlucky. Like Ifro said at one point, your hand was 3 Tangle Wires and Triskelion with no permanents in play.
Yes, it's true.
But
I even had to discard to having 8 cards at one point, and I decided that I probably wouldn't need more than 2 Tangle Wires at any given time.
Right, but I still think I could have won if I had not screwed up. So that's ultimately my fault. So that's I think what it boils down to. I find Magic tends to work that way. You make a mistake, and it is very quick to punish you for it.
Yes.
But that's kind of what keeps us coming back, I suppose.
Absolutely. If this were an easy game to play, it wouldn't be fun. And,
right.
Workshop mirrors are tough, and I think they're very interesting. I think we had a very good game there. I think that Workshop mirrors can be really interesting that way.
Yeah, there's some interesting things going on. Like you won a game again when you had no permanents in play at all, and I had like 7 in play. But also my deck is not designed to win from that position. It's designed to eventually find Crucible. I had all 4 Crucibles and then Buried Ruin, which I'd already actually used that game. Also, I ended up taking an extra hit down to 1 life off the Mishra's Factory to hope that I could get it with Smokestack instead of Ghost Quarter. And that ended up haunting me because later I couldn't play the Phyrexian Metamorph because I couldn't play the alternate cost.
LSV getting hunted by a ghost quarter. Man, that was
Yes,
a good one.
that was that was that is what is actually what ended up happening. So yeah, the mirror. It's funny. I painted myself into a corner where the deck I'm playing, I think I have a lot more opportunities to screw up. You are gonna play your creatures and attack me when you have the opportunity. You have a lot of things to think about, like how to
I
use
have
wastelands and play around smokestack. But
I have a lot of plays too. I mean,
yeah,
playing against Smokestack is just as difficult as playing into it because, as you saw, I kept putting permanents on the table. There were times when I could have stopped and let you grind out the board, and then the Smokestack goes away. Trying to make those decisions about do I play into the Smokestack or do I hold back and let the Smokestack burn itself out? Those are some pretty tough decisions, and those are often tough judgment calls too.
yeah. So it was, but I ended up not. I think a couple of things I could have done differently could have ended up mattering. It's hard for me to know which ones were the ones that ultimately made the difference. Like I don't know if I would have found Crucible. Like it was 2 cards down when I died,
Okay.
so it's possible I get 2 more draw steps if I do a
Hmm.
couple things differently. But I don't know. Like I said, it's not clear to me.
It's tough. There are a lot of judgment calls. If you had kept the ley line and you'd sacrificed something else, all of your cards mattered there. They were all relevant. So it's
Yeah,
it's very tough to say.
definitely. And like I said, it's an intricate
And
matchup.
yeah, and if you hadn't gotten that null rod, I would have been able to use relic to be able to keep your crucible offline.
Correct. It's funny that the reason I played this shops deck last time and the reason I played it this time is I like the shops the mirror match, and so far I'm
Hmm.
2-0 against non-shops decks and 0-2 against shops decks. So because I've
I
essentially played the same list with a couple changes between the
no,
2 weeks,
I
which
really like that list. I think it's a really fun list, and it's a really old school list too.
yeah,
Uba Stacks goes back to a very long time ago, back
Robert
when
Vrillman.
arcane spells were cast in limited. And
Yeah,
I think your deck's a lot of fun. I've played it in a Magic the Gathering online daily. It was a lot of fun to play. I really
yeah.
like it.
I was surprised by how much fun it was to play. That's why I ended up on it. Like ultimately, I want to play a deck I'll enjoy, and I have been enjoying playing this deck. I played it. I saw you got ninth, and I think, and I squeaked in at like sixth or seventh in the Power Nine Challenge a couple weeks ago. So I think we
Yeah,
were both playing the same deck.
I think so. I mean, I just your list looked like a lot of fun, and it was. If folks at home, if you haven't tried this deck, it's a bunch of different contraptions you can assemble. There's
Yeah,
Uba Mask and Bazaar. There's Bridge and Bazaar, as you saw in action. There's Crucible and Smokestack. There's Crucible and Bazaar. These are all synergistic components in a deck that also just locks the opponent out of the game. And because of Smokestack, you can deal with any permanent.
yeah. So looks like our match is ready. We're gonna watch Kai Budde against Steve Menendian, and I have no idea what either player's on, and we're about to find out.
I'm looking forward to this.
Wow.
All
Alrighty.
right, so it looks like Steve has Delver featuring white, and Kai is on
Storm.
Storm. Wow,
Yeah.
this is a great matchup. I love this matchup. Um,
And Kai's gonna, I think, gonna take a pretty risky line here that won't always work out against Delver, but he doesn't know he's playing against Delver, and
oh yeah,
he's got no other choice. He's gonna play Dark Ritual Necropotence.
absolutely. Since he has no idea what Steve's on it, I can't imagine Kai not just casting wrong art necropotence on the first turn. Um, so I've played
Kai's
this match.
not doing very well on his art choices, is he?
No, I don't dislike that picture of Dark Ritual. I like the beta ones, but the Tempest is nice art. Um, but I'm really not a fan of. I mean, Necropotence is some of the most iconic art in the entire game. Mark Teeden's work is just phenomenal. In fact, I think Defense Grid's another piece of his, which is, I think there's only one picture, so the grids are always the right picture.
Yeah. So Kai chose to Necro for, it looks like he's on 8 right now, 9. What is your inclination? You're 10. You're playing against an unknown opponent and you're on the play.
I like that. You don't want to go too low. You don't want Steve to drop Lotus and throw some lightning bolts at you, or maybe have a first turn for Skellion and finish you off. This is going to set up Kai so that he has enough to dig pretty deep next turn, whatever Steve's on. So I like that. I like paying about half the life. Now,
Yeah, it's enough to play a land and reload. If you're playing against something like Workshops and they play a Sphere on turn 1, so you can't go off on turn 2. But it's not so much that you're vulnerable to, like you said, a quick attack or a Delver deck stringing together a couple lightning bolts.
right, exactly. Now, I've played this matchup a lot, and I think that game 1 usually is good for, in general, it's pretty good for Delver. They have the counters and they have an early clock, but sometimes Storm just has turn 1 Necropotence, and, that's just usually enough to win it. Now, with Steve's hand, it's not a very exciting hand in this particular matchup. In other matchups, it's just fine. But here it looks like he's going to be able to throw 1 counter and that's it. Whereas if Steve had Force or Mental Misstep, this whole turn could have gone, and this whole game could have gone very differently.
I don't know if I love Steve's hand on the draw here. What matchup are you hoping to be facing if you keep this hand going second?
I think you're hoping to face the mirror.
I agree.
Possibly Zoo.
Yeah. Well, you're just hoping to keep Zoo at all points, or face Zoo at all points.
I guess that's true.
But I think that if you, in a league that's seen a fair share of Workshops and Storm decks, this hand's very poor against both on the draw. It is good in the mirror, and game 1 when you have no information, like it's good against the mid-range blue decks as well, like which Kai has frequently played, so that might have factored into.
Yeah, I think Steve probably kept this because Kai has been really favoring slow blue decks, and I have to assume that Steve looked at his hand and thought, my opponent's probably going to play an island and pass the turn. This is great.
Well, Kai did play an island. He didn't quite pass the turn, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. He did play the island part of it, but instead of saying go, he cast Necropotence, which is, a different thing. And now Kai gets the tough job of assembling a hand, and gosh, it sure looks like he has a good hand there.
It is tricky with Necro choosing what to keep since you're restricted to the 7.
Right.
The next thing is, what does Steve do? Does he just play the turn on Delver, or does he leave Flusterstorm, Brainstorm, or Mystical Tutor, or Pyroblast up? He can leave all 4 instants up.
So Steve is probably not going to win this game if he just leaves Flusterstorm up, because worst come to worst, Kai can just grab another and worrying about lightning.
Yeah,
So I think Steve has to run out the Delver.
I agree. I would lean towards just being aggressive here. I think Steve's incredibly low percentage to win this game anyway.
Yes.
But by leaving his mana untapped, he just basically gives Kai another turn full of Necro, because Kai's surely going to have kept at least 1 piece of hand disruption.
Absolutely. As a general principle, you have to make the high variance plays when you're about to lose.
Yep.
I think Virgil said that to those with no hope for safety, the only hope for safety is to abandon hope for safety.
That's a roundabout way of saying that, but that is, in fact, accurate.
So, it looks like Steve opted against playing anything, and Kai can see that Steve's hand consists of a Flusterstorm and a Red Blast, and...
Well, the probe hasn't resolved yet. Steve could potentially counter it here.
That's a good point. So if you're Steve, do you like countering this?
Not really, but I'm not in love with any other option either, just because...
Well, do you like it more than not countering this?
I think I would let it resolve, but like I said, I'm pretty unhappy either way, because you can cast 1 card this turn, and again, the odds that Kai did not keep at least 1 copy of Duress don't seem very high.
I agree. So, Kai pitched Defense Grid earlier, and to me, the most important card in this deck for the Storm player, actually the grids. The grids made a huge difference when I was testing this matchup. Well, and they're just a duress that ignores Red Blast and Mental Misstep and Flusterstorm, and they arrive, and then the game ends.
Well, they also duress all your opponent's cards, which is nice.
Exactly. Right. They went an unrestricted Mind Twist, but now you can get it in convenient 2-mana form.
Actually, Randy brings up a really good point here. Maybe Steve wasn't thinking about countering the pro, he was thinking about conceding the game. And that may have been a stronger play, because what percentage do you think you are to win that game? It can't be very high.
I don't think Steve's into conceding. He doesn't care if he's getting attacked by 37 Goblin tokens or Zombie tokens. I don't think Steve likes to concede very much.
So Steve fetching for Volcanic, signifying his intent to cast one of his blue spells, and there's actually valid arguments for all three.
I think I would just let this duress happen. I mean, you get to keep a counter up of some kind, however the duress ends up going. And since you have both Brainstorm and Mystical to further yourself along either way, I don't think you take either.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'd rather leave Flusterstorm up. What Steve can do, though, is he can Brainstorm in response to protect the Flusterstorm, and then and assume Kai's not going off this turn, and then next turn maybe do something. But I also like just playing nothing there.
I think it's nothing, and so Flusterstorm goes away. So that was a pretty good draw there, Soul Ring. So that would let Kai Demonic Tutor. Now he could chain Demonic Tutor into Black Lotus, Lotus into Yawgmoth's Will with a black floating, get up to 4 floating. I think that's enough to cast Tendrils. I don't know if that's enough Storm though. I think that's enough to cast Tendrils.
So he gets yeah, it is enough to cast Tendrils.
Right, Lotus.
And he gets to Dark Witch or Duress. I think that might just be lethal here, because right now he's cast 5 spells. Lotus was 6, Yawgmoth's was 7, 8, 9, yeah. Oh, wait, no, he's 1 short.
He's 1 short?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, he can refire the Gataxian Probe, too.
No, he's not 1 short. He's got, because he has 1 mana floating now, and he'll get Lotus, play Yawgmoth with 1 floating, replay Lotus, go up to 4, Ritual go to 6, DT Tendrils. So his concern here is that if Steve casts Brainstorm and hits Force of Will, then Kai actually, the thing is, he doesn't lose. That's the upside of all this.
Exactly.
He just gets another go at it next turn.
Right. Kai doesn't lose. He just gets to play this whole thing again next turn with a brand new hand. And I guess it can't be that. He can't take that many cards because Steve could Mystical for Lightning Bolt. So I guess Kai can't go below 4.
Steve can Mystical for Lightning Bolt if he's found another red source, which off of Brainstorm isn't that unreasonable.
That's true. Does Kai have enough Storm to go off here?
He does.
Okay. I like just going for it.
Yeah. It's reasonable to do so. Given that Steve can't do all that much next turn, maybe you wait, but this seems like it's a pretty high payoff, and again with a Necro out and an Ancestral in your hand, you're gonna get to see, let's say you Necro for, even if you just Necro for 4, you're still seeing 7 new cards.
It's rare for a Storm deck to have a cleanly deterministic line play. That's part of why I like the grid. It lets you ensure that your opponent can't. Yeah. It lets you ensure that your opponent can't do anything, even in the face of a Sensei's Dividing Top to dance around discard, for example.
It's kind of unfortunate. Kai's plan actually sets himself up to be in poor position against Mental Misstep if Steve finds it for the Dark Ritual, because he doesn't have any extra mana. But
it does. Steve has not been good at finding Mental Misstep this game. If he had one in his opener or if that Brainstorm, it would have been pretty good for Steve. But no, he didn't find it, and Kai wins in an impressive fashion.
Oh, turn 1 Necro, turn 2 Necro for 10, win the game. So kind of how you drew it up. Kai not going to be sideboarding a whole lot besides more of that excellent defense grid.
Oh, man. Those grids, I really like that. And
Steve's on 4-color Delver, because I see at Nature's Claim, I've got to assume there's an Ancient Grudge floating around there somewhere, even though I can't quite see.
I can't quite make it out myself.
But Steve loves Ancient Grudge too, so.
He does. He does. I really like Ancient Grudge too. I mean, last season I was playing red in the mentor deck I played just for Ancient Grudge. I had one deck Fade too, but really it was there for Ancient Grudge. I also, last week, you saw a demonstration of the power of Defense Grid as Ifro just rendered my entire deck invalid with that card.
I think, and Randy and I were kind of talking about this in the pregame. I think that this Storm deck is heavily favored against blue decks, which was not always the case. And Defense Grid's a big part of that.
It's the grids. It's the grids. Yeah. Dark Petition has given this deck so much more consistency and resiliency than it's ever had before, or at least since it's gotten to enjoy 4 Lion's Eye Diamonds and 4 Burning Wishes. But it certainly hasn't been nearly this good since then. But despite having all that consistency, that's not enough in the face of decks full of really good counters. Defense Grid, that's how it gets through all those counters.
Funnily enough, the Burning Long, or whatever you want to call it, the Burning Wish deck with 4 Burning Wish, 4 Lion's Eye Diamond, that was the first vintage deck I played at like a big vintage tournament. So I have a soft spot for that deck.
I remember playing Long. I was still at Brown then, still an undergrad, and my good buddy who also loved vintage or Type 1, he really liked big creature decks, so he'd play Spirit Monger, and then I would play my Tendrils, and that's sort of where vintage was then. People were playing, not just my friend Andy, but a lot of people then were playing with cards like Spirit Monger in the format. And then the Long deck introduced something so much more vicious than anyone else was doing, that it just really dominated up until Wizards decided they had had enough of that.
And I think, rightfully did in fact choose to restrict a number of the cards. Ooh, I see some nice hands here. See lots of Force of Wills and Ancestral.
So Steve's got an Ancestral and a Red Blast, and
Mental Misstep too.
And on Kai's side, Kai has a turn 1 Duress into Wheel of Fortune. Wow. This is great. So Kai's hand is incredible, but Steve's hand has all the goods it needs to handle it.
Steve's hand is ahead here, and this is another spot where drawing Defense Grid would be pretty nice. I mean, Steve would Force of Will it, but it would elicit a Force of Will, not a Misstep or a Pyroblast.
Absolutely. And that Mental Misstep in Steve's hand is really good, because it means that Steve can just take care of the duress that Kai's going to throw.
So presumably Steve just cracks Mental Misstep here.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean,
it's the best answer.
You don't want this card to resolve. You don't want Kai to know your hand.
So, what is Kai's line here? Since Kai can go for the wheel.
I like going for the wheel here, though it does. I actually like Lotus Ponder Wheel.
Yeah.
I think you pop the Lotus for blue, Ponder, and then maybe you find another Duress or something like that. And if not, you wheel, and you can set up what cards you want to draw in the wheel hand off Ponder if you don't find anything.
I think that's pretty good because you end up with a decent amount of mana in play. So let's say Kai cracks Lotus for blue and casts Ponder. Steve's not going to counter the Ponder, and then you can either find Duress or Defense Grid to resolve your wheel because Kai has a ton of mana. You could also just lead with Dark Ritual here. This indicates that Kai's going to go for wheel no matter what. I don't think Steve's going to counter this ritual. He's just going to look for a Mental Misstep.
Yeah, there's some solid cards for Steve, but not solid enough. But what it does mean, because he found another blue card, is that even if Kai were to find Duress, Steve's going to be okay.
What if Kai finds Cabal Therapy, though? His first name is probably going to be Force of Will.
Yeah, I agree. Well, his first name will still be Kai, but yes, he'll certainly be choosing Force of Will. Actually, I think the best thing that Kai could hope to find here is Mind's Desire.
Not every deck plays it, though most of them do. If he finds Desire, I'm sure he's snapping off Mind's Desire and casting it for, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Yeah, that's insane. think given how good Wheel of
Your Kai's
Fortune is, I'm much happier just cracking and pondering first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because, Kai has every reason to believe that Steve has Force of Will, at least in his deck, and, now that he's drawn these extra cards, Ponder just makes sense. So, what do we have here? I can't actually see
I
that.
see a Dark Petition, looks like a land, and then another Dark Petition.
I think you shuffle these, actually.
Yeah. Oh, Yawgmoth's Bargain. The problem
Everyone's
is
bargain.
Kai has not
Oh, in
played
that
it.
case,
Well,
Kai could play Bargain this turn, and if that gets forced, still have the wheel next turn with Tolarian Academy. So actually, if that's Bargain, I like keeping it.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
good. Kai can
Yeah.
Kai can also, if he so chooses, cast Dark Petition for like a duress and still I think have enough mana for that. Yeah, he would still have enough mana, but I like just casting Bargain here. Steve's
Oh,
of course
yeah.
gonna Force a Will. And then
Right.
turn 2 you've got Wheel with 5 mana.
Yeah, I think everything about that is good. And if the wheel gets countered, then Kai has Dark Petition.
A castable Dark Petition for Necroblades.
So Kai's going to be throwing 3 huge threats at Steve in the next in this turn and then the next 2 turns. So I really actually like this line.
Well, that's one of the strengths of this Storm deck. Kai is going to have to battle through Mental Misstep, Force of Will, Ancestral Recall, Force of Will, Pyroblast, and unless Steve draws something, it looks like Kai's going to have a Necropotence in play in next turn.
I think so. Wow.
Or potentially just actually Yawgmoth's Will, right? He can Dark Petition, play Yawgmoth's Will, replay Lotus. I guess he doesn't really. He kind of fizzles from there. So probably just Necropotence at that point.
Does he have a ritual in the graveyard?
He does.
So, and if he has a Lotus and a ritual, he's going to be able to get 5.
Yeah, but then he can petition down to
I guess
3.
he's 1 short.
Yeah. Steve could give some thought to letting this resolve. I don't think he should, but yeah, Steve's hand is pretty bad, especially after he uses all his resources here.
Yeah, Steve's hand is pretty bad. I still don't think you let Kai just gas up with 7 cards, though. This Storm deck's pretty scary.
That it is.
No, it's a 2-for-1, one way or the other for Steve.
This is the turn Steve needs to draw like a Fluster or, well, he drew another Force of Will.
All right. That'll keep him alive. So, I guess he's going to counter the petition here, and then hope that Kai bricks for a while.
You could actually let petition resolve and just counter whatever it is Kai gets.
You could. I guess you could. I think the way Kai tries to mitigate that is by leaving the Mox Ruby open and leaving open the possibility of getting Empty the Warrens, right? Oh, no, he can't do that. That's not quite enough.
Yeah, he's 1 short. I think he's 1 short of even casting Bargain if he gets Dark Petition for Will, plays Lotus, plays Ritual. I think that's 1 short, but unless Kai has a land in his graveyard, which I don't believe he does.
I don't see any, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see. But yeah. So I don't know. Do you let this happen if you're Steve?
Well, it depends what you think Kai's going to get. If you think Kai's getting Necro, you probably want Necro in the graveyard rather than in Kai's deck, even though Kai technically can't cast Necro if he draws it. So that complicates things even more.
I guess that's a good point. So it looks like Steve did opt to let it happen, and there's no way Steve's going to let this happen. Steve might be an aggro deck, but not that way.
No. And you know what? Even though Steve has now cast his 3rd Force of Will, unless Steve draws a threat, this isn't the end of the world. Wow, that was insane draw.
That Ancient Grudge was really good.
That kills 4 of Kai's mana.
It does. That was quite a draw right there. So suddenly Steve went from being in a really tough spot to being in really good shape, because now instead of having a deck full of powerful top decks, Kai has a deck full of things he can't cast anymore. Wow, and there's the Yawgmoth's Will.
But both these players are just drawing insanely well. Now Kai's probably just going to draw Dark Ritual and then just win the game immediately. That's the only thing I can assume.
Well,
No,
there's Van Tutor, so we'll
only
get to
one
enjoy
sword.
Dark Ritual next turn. This is where Steve draws, I'm sure, probably a Graveyard Hate spell.
Yeah. Or like a Flusterstorm or something.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
he did
Steve
not
is the
draw a
first one to
thing.
miss. Look at how resilient the Storm deck is. It fought through 3 Force of Wills, Mental Misstep, a Pyroblast which still hasn't done anything, and an Ancestral Recall without, and an Ancient Grudge killing 2 of its artifacts.
And having 4 of its mana blown up turn. I mean, yeah, the Storm deck's incredibly good. And I'm actually really happy for Storm to be good again. Storm spent a very long time being... It's a classic deck, and it hasn't seen its day in the sun for a long time. And with Dark Petition arriving and Chalice being restricted, I'm glad it's able to get in the ring again and start to do well.
Yeah, Storm spent a lot of years in the doghouse, which is unfortunate. I enjoy playing the deck very much, but the fact that it might be the best deck now, that's okay. I mean, decks get to be the best decks, right? So I don't think it's at a rate which is too abusive, because Workshops does still keep it in check, but this is pretty interesting.
I agree. I mean, I think Storm is incredibly good. I'm actually going to be facing Kai in this sequence, and I like my matchup against Storm with Workshops.
Do you have Leylands of Sanctity in your sideboard?
No, I have 3 Mindbreak Traps. I just think they're better
okay.
in the matchup.
All right, fair enough. Those are both they're similar. I guess you can get Time Twister or Wheel of Fortune into Mindbreak Trap, which is nice.
Exactly. I know that the White Leyline is a better card against Oath, but I actually have a lot of Oath hate. I'll be honest, I kind of thought you might be on Oath this trimester.
I almost played it.
So I have a couple Caracases and playing Grafdigger's Cage because I thought there was a good chance that you'd be on Oath.
I guess I'm glad I didn't. though you still beat me, so maybe that doesn't matter. But I'm glad I didn't play Oath because I play against Chris, and he's playing a Storm deck. And I don't know what my third opponent is playing yet, Bob.
And I still did get to use Caracas against you, which is something at least.
Technically true. It actually may have won you the game. It forced me to use a Ghost Quarter, and then I'm not sure how it unfolded from there. Kai thought for a while here, by the way. I think he was trying to decide whether Steve had Mental Misstep in hand. Ultimately, he concluded if he did, so be it.
But it looks like this is going to work out for Kai, and barring any sort of misclicks, Kai will win his first match. And
True.
I guess his deck from the last trimester didn't quite work out for him, but I have to say I really liked that deck. The Enlightened Kai deck was full of really cool cards, and it was trying to use Enlightened Tutor, which is a powerful card that's sort of underutilized in the format. And, I have to give Kai credit for building an interesting, innovative deck.
So Kai replays his artifacts, gets to ritual again, gets to use Tolarian Academy, sacrifice Lotus, Dark Petition.
Yeah. Here's the duress to make sure the coast is clear. That Red Elemental Blast has not lived up to the things that Steve was hoping it might do.
Nope. Pyroblast might be at an all-time low in terms of efficacy. It's not. It's just so often just dead. I think there's multiple matchups where it's just not the best card. When for a while I thought it was great, and I was playing like 3 in my main deck.
I mean, for a while I had a Painter build where I was playing 5 of them because I thought they were that incredible in the metagame, and they were. And now the metagame has shifted pretty heavily. And it looks like just the Tendrils, and guess that's it. And and then Kai finds the Ancestral.
Oof, lucky.
Not that it's going to matter here.
I don't know what he would do if he didn't find that Ancestral. All right, and Tendrils put Steve out of his agony
Sportsmanlike
here.
way, Kai opts against casting Ataxian Probe, so Steve doesn't have to feel bad about that Red Elemental Blast. And it looks like Kai wins his first match. That was an impressive showing for Storm.
It was Storms 1-1 on the week right now, as are workshops, with Steve's Delver deck being 0-1, I suppose.
Mm.
Um, and then workshops are workshops are 2-1 because Ephra won with his shops deck. So far, shops is a pretty good record.
Yeah,
And then
when Chalice of the Void got restricted, a lot of people, including some workshop aficionados, were convinced that Mishra's time had passed, and I think we're seeing that that's far from the case. If I went to a tournament at Gaming Etc. on Saturday, and there were 21 people. And I split the tournament with my friend Brian Schlossberg. We were both on Ravager workshops, and it's just a really good deck in this field. I played against a lot of Storm decks, and the Rise of Storm is also good for Mishra.
Definitely, that's one of the things that's keeping me from saying Dark Petition Storm's a problem. It might be that come 3 more months, right? I'm expecting no action on Monday's ban restricted list announcement for Vintage, but come 3 months, we might be clamoring for the restriction of Dark Petition. I think that's something that could happen. Workshop seems to keep it in check. I know when I was building Storm decks before this week, even when I was like, well, what if I dedicate 8 or 9 sideboard cards, 10 sideboard cards to workshops? It's like I don't think that the matchup is that great.
I agree. I think that for a long time, workshops were the villain. And now I think that you're seeing the role they can play as a hero, where they're keeping this degenerate combo deck in check. And I think that's good. I'm really happy with what Wizards has done with the banned and restricted list. While for selfish reasons I'd love to see Brainstorm unrestricted, realistically, I don't expect any change to be made. And, barring unrestricting Brainstorm, I think that there shouldn't be any changes. Certainly nothing is worth restricting here. The format's healthy, it's diverse. I went to that real-life tournament. I played against a whole variety of different decks, and a lot of people were there having fun.
Yeah, I mean, Vintage is awesome, and I've been satisfied with the kind of the breadth of the format. I do think that every now and then new sets come out that do shake it up. We get a surprisingly high amount of playables depending on what's going on. And ban restricted announcements, them happening in Vintage has I think a beneficial effect on the format, because it just provides the metagame shakeups that set releases can't necessarily do.
I agree. The Wizards has given us a lot of really fun toys to play with. Magic Origins was great. It gave Dark Petition to Storm, which, as we talked about earlier, reinvigorated that deck. Tiny Jace has seen a lot of Vintage play.
I've enjoyed playing Tiny Jace. I played a Jeskai Mentor list that played 3 of them, I think, in the first Power 9 challenge.
Yeah. It's a good card. It's a Vintage level card. And
I believe so.
Oh, also Hangerback Walkers from that set. Wow, what a good set that was.
I died to Hangerback Walker as, like you said, Doom Traveler. Doom Traveler made an appearance. It was so good because it had only 1 power instead of a more.
Yes, exactly. If Hangerback Walker had been 2 mana for a 17/17, it would not have done anything there. But the fact that I could sort of build my own Scrib Sprite through a lot of work and a couple of mana worked out really well.
Yeah. So we've got some more awesome matches coming up for you. Next up, we have Randy Buehler against Bob Marr. We don't know what either player's on. This is week 1 of our new trimester, and we'll be getting to that pretty soon here. We're gonna cut to some messages, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.